one of the accidental secrets to my success, such as it's been, is this kind of relentless reframing of stuff to make it a success. I mean, I'm actually staying with my parents in Canberra at the moment, and they were always bemused by my life because they're like, we keep waiting for Michael to fall in a pile of shit. But he keeps doing random things. But he always seems to pop up, going ta-da and holding daisies. And I think that's in part just because of a bunch of good luck along the way. But there's a degree to which I've just had a wiring that's always made me go, I'm just going to explain how this art of failure is actually part of my glorious plan for triumph. And it's been a very liberating ability to do that. In those 2 pages, what's at the heart? What's the gem at the heart of those 2 pages for you, Ashley?
It is that transformational quality of failure that her language just creates this beautiful imagery for, that I hadn't quite, and she talks about it as this fleeting, just when it looks like winter, it's spring, that the word we have is so imperfect, and does describe that dead end. And that's how we tend to think about failure. I'm a failure. I failed. That is finite. That is who I am. It's definitive. And instead she brings out all this imagery around how we need language for how that is not true to the human experience, that it's more of that, that blankness, that wiping clean. And I especially loved the limitlessness that can follow, because I think it's really easy to forget that part of it and not ignore it, but kind of fail to see it in the depths of our misery, that while we're perhaps surrendering to that pain in that moment and whatever happened, that it does create this kind of new possibility, that it's anything but a dead end, even though it may feel like it in that moment, that we can allow ourselves to be, I think she used the words like allow ourselves to be inspired anew in these moments.
Actually, what's the difference in your experience between people who become mired in the failure, for whom it does feel like a dead end, and for people who find the way out of that or the limitless through it?
Oh man, that is a $1 million question. I think that there's a lot of different parts of that. Like there's the part that I've, talked to resilience researchers about, like, what does it actually, and I'm thinking of to give credit where credit's due, Dr. Monique Crane at Macquarie University out in Australia, where you're currently at. She looks at organizational resilience and talks about how, we need we have the self-awareness to know what's going on and be able to look at our emotions and process them. We need to feel resourced, to feel like we can change our situation, and we need some distance from that experience of stress. And I think all of that's true, and I've really appreciated her work on the topic. I also think there's more to it, though. There's had a wonderful handful of conversations with this woman who reached out to me. Now, a lot of people send me their stories of failure, and this wonderful woman, Aset, did as well. But in her case, her story just had this fierceness and determination to do something about it that I really had to respond. And I ended up on the phone with her, and she said, and it was right at the beginning of COVID, and she said, like, I don't see my experience represented anywhere on your website. And she's a woman of color. She was leading a school to create an educational experience for children from Hispanic and Black backgrounds, I believe. And it had all fallen apart amid COVID. And I'm ever grateful for her feedback, because it was such an interesting moment where I realized, I built that website start to finish. And at that moment, I didn't see my own experience reflected in it, because here I am on the website talking about, like, we're going to use our failures and learn and grow and repair with gold. And when I was in the depth of that experience, that is not what I felt like. it was very hard to eat my own medicine
Right.
when I was actually in it. And
Right.
and what Aset was really good at pointing out was just how important, over the months that we chatted, her situation changed dramatically. She is an incredibly powerful and brilliant woman who, found a way forward. And it really showed her, but our conversations highlighted how important how the rest of the world treats us is. Are we all given the opportunity at a second chance? Are we all, Aset refers to it as grace. Do we give each other grace when we've fallen down? Can we give each other the kindness we need in those moments, the forgiveness we need in those moments when we're floundering? To give ourselves that, but to also, when we see someone else floundering, to recognize that that's what it is and give them the second chance. So what's the difference between those that stay down there and those that rise up? I mean, I think it is, as Dr. Crane assured me, it is theoretically true that we can all repair with gold, but it is not psychologically true for everyone. That it does take an incredible power and good luck and people around you to support you, certainly.
If you're around somebody who is in that moment of elusive but somehow very real failure, where you're like, okay, I can't define it, but God, it feels like it's happening right now. What guidance would you give me and people listening around how you help people not get mired in this moment?
Our tendency is to blame, especially if we were harmed by the failure. It's very hard to kind of to rise above that instinct. And I see it everywhere. When the failure is our fault, our tendency is to become, we feel so much shame that our tendency is to become defensive around it and find reasons why it wasn't our fault, why we weren't set up for success, why, something else was out of our control. And certainly those things are probably true. They're also probably true for the other people in our life. So I think that tendency towards blame is probably the instinct that I spend the most time just truly in battle with. And I love, I've started to reference Karl Popper's principle of rationality, where he talks about how we simply everyone just makes decisions that make the most sense to us in the moment, given the circumstances that surround us and our experience. I mean, he says it much more eloquently than that, but it's basically, it means that blame is somewhat absurd, that we're just humans kind of trying our best, doing what we think is going to work in the moment and finding out maybe otherwise that it doesn't, but that we're all just doing that. There's a kind of shared humanity in that experience. And I think that's where that grace comes from.
Hey, it's MBS here. My newsletter is The Works with MBS. Every week I take a key tool, insight, metaphor, and make it an essential distillation so that you can unlock your greatness. If that sounds interesting, sign up at mbs.works.